Greg Mohr, thank you so much for coming on the Edison podcast. I appreciate you being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. So I found you through Podmatch. That's a pretty good place to find people. Actually, they do all the work. I just say yes or no. But one of the things that you do is franchises. And I've had a couple people on about franchises, but I think there's always different takes on every bit of it. So, how did you get into the franchise business?
Well, let's go back into the Wayback Machine for that, Ed. Back in high school, back when I was in high school, most of us got jobs at fast food places. Mine just happened to be Taco Bell. And as I moved up in Taco Bell world and started becoming a manager on that, I found out that I was working for a master franchiser. Her name was Kathy, and she had owned 50 Taco Bells throughout the Sacramento, California, and Woodland, California area. And that was my first introduction to franchising. Loved it. It was a lot of fun. I helped her build her teams, build her restaurants. Fast forward about 30 years later, after working in corporate for a while, I decided to get out of corporate, and I wanted to get into my own business, do my own thing. Read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, ruined my corporate career for me. That was gone. While I was in corporate, I actually ran dry cleaners with a friend of mine, had storage units, had rental properties. So I was doing a lot of things on the side, but left that, decided, that the privately owned businesses, that was a bit of a challenge getting out there with the dry cleaners, knowing nothing about dry cleaning whatsoever, and had to figure that all out for ourselves. Where to get the equipment from, how to prepare it, where to dump the excess liquids that we had. So I thought that franchising thing was really cool because it was a playbook, step-by-step playbook, what you do. So I said, got to get back into that. So I went out there and started searching for franchises, and I found a franchise consultant who knew they existed. I did not at the time, and he got me into a great franchise system. I ran that for a while and then decided that I really liked what that franchise consultant was doing. So I went back to him and I said, teach me what you do. And that was about 12 years ago. Haven't looked back since.
Wow. And he actually said yes.
He did. He actually said yes.
People go, I don't need any more competition. So
yeah. I was surprised. He said, yeah, it's amazing. We actually do not run into each other a whole lot out there in the world of franchising with that. I very rarely run into somebody who's already spoken or is speaking with a franchise consultant.
Now, you were working for Taco Bell, and as the person that had all those franchises, 50 of them, and you said you went in the corporate world. What did you do in the corporate world?
So after I got out of running the Taco Bell restaurants, I actually moved into another restaurant that I got into. It was called the Lions Restaurant. And I don't know how old you are, but it was many, many years ago when they did that. But Lions Restaurant was throughout the Northern California area, kind of like an upscale Denny's on that one. And I ran those for about 15 years. I got bored with that and then decided to go back to school. I got a degree in electrical engineering and physics, became a microelectronics engineer, semiconductor engineer with Motorola Semiconductor at the time, which then moved over to Freescale and then NXP. And I did that for about 15 years. And then I also got my master's degree at that time in management information systems. And then while I was getting my master's degree in business, that's when I read Robert Kiyosaki's book. And that's when I said, end of this, we got to move on.
Yeah. People don't realize how good, people say there's two books that changed their life, Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I said that to somebody the other day, and they go, what about the Bible? I go, that's not what people are looking for. That's different. That's a totally different. We're talking about, well, how does it change your life for what you're going to do in business? Yeah.
Exactly.
And and the best, I don't know if it was him, but one of them says, what's the difference between a saver and a investor? Moses is the investor and Jesus saves.
There you go. Very true.
That explains it right there. You don't want to be a saver. You want to be an investor in your future. Yeah. Yeah. Because I just reread, or I should say listened to, I do Audible. And I tell everybody I do it at the fastest number you can get. Almost 2, whatever, almost, depending on how they talk in the beginning. Because some people talk slow. And if you turn them up to 2, it's like they're just talking normal. And then there's other people who talk fast. You turn them up to 1.75, and that's about as fast as you can get it with them. And but
true.
I was at my cabin last week, and I went through 4 of his books.
Wow.
Yeah, that's because you do walking and everything, and we do a lot of walking and kayaking, and you
Cool.
can get through a 5-hour book in 2.5 hours
True.
if you
True.
have it on a little bit higher speed. And it was just good to re-listen to everything, especially with what's going on in this world with taxes and unrealized capital gain and how they con you in. And I know this is a little bit off the topic, but it's really, as a business owner, you really need to know this stuff. But the unrealized capital gains they keep talking about, and they keep saying, we're going to take from the rich and give to the poor, which if you listen to his books or read it or listen to it, he talks about the 16th Amendment and how in 1913, that's how they sold it, was we're going to steal, Robin Hood theory. He's going to steal from the rich, give it to the poor or the working class. And everybody's like, okay, we're on board. And then the first year after the tax thing goes in, after they all approved it, they didn't get any more money the next year. So they said, okay, now everybody's got to pay taxes. And that's what happened. So just be careful voting for anything because you think somebody should pay for it. The only people who pay for it is the working class.
This is true.
And one of the reasons I'm saying this is if you don't like that, that's fine. Just get a business, do really well, make good money over time, because it doesn't happen in 1 hour. It takes about 15 good years. Some people have, there's always exception to every rule. But what I'm trying to explain to you is don't fight it. Just figure a way around it. There's so much stuff you can invest in so many different things that give you tax bracket. I deal with a lot of investors in the real estate industry who build multifamily, and they show like they don't, and I call it the Donald Trump tax plan, because you don't show the income because it's always into the next project. And that is legal by the tax code. So don't complain at them because they know how to use the tax code. And that's the difference. When you're getting into business, you need to understand this stuff. So maybe there is some tax credits you can get in your area to offset for your company. We can't go off of what currently is just being said on the political film right now, that they're going to give this amount of money for business or this amount, because those are all promises. They got to get through Congress, and to get that through Congress is very difficult. So, and I'm gonna get off my soapbox right now. As you can tell, I do talk radio on top of everything, but I want everybody to understand there's so much more, and why you have more control having your own business than working for somebody. And that's what you're talking about with Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I don't think people are catching on to that. You were like, oh, I'm an employee, I got to stop being an employee. Is that kind of what you heard?
That's exactly what I got out of that book. And exactly that is that you're not gonna get to where you want to be being an employee. I mean, eventually you're going to retire, and what are you going to have? 401k plan, a little bit there. That's not building equity in something at all.
Okay. And again, it goes back to, we don't learn anything in high school. We don't learn anything in college when it comes to this. No one talked about the 1971 tax, how we got off gold standard and how that changed everything to where there's no more pensions and no more this and the 401. It's just all about tax now. And you need to study this stuff. You need to listen to books. Or read books, whatever works for you, and podcasts and so much more, because there's so much information out there that you need to get. And again, I'm going to go back to you, Greg, because this has all been me talking. But people need to understand this. I bring people on here to talk about what people can do to make money, not what, and also the trials and tribulations and the failures that people go through. So people understand you're going to make mistakes. I just got hurt in the last year with the real estate mortgage industry that I've been in for 25 years, doing really well in most of the time. There's occasionally you had some issue, but this most recent year and a half with the 5% increase in interest rates really killed our industry drastically to we lost a third of all the people in the mortgage industry.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and that's why I'm trying to explain. Not only are you building your business, but you need to have other sources of income too, just in case, passive income, whatever that looks like to you. You need to go research it, find what works for you. And that's what we're here about. So let's go back to talking to franchises and what people can get.
Excellent.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I just want to get some information out. I apologize, Greg.
Well, all right. Good information for people to know, Ed. Absolutely.
Okay. So, all right. So you're working for Taco Bell, then you went on to corporate world, and then you just read the book and you said, okay, I got to start my own thing. And then you found how did you pick the franchise that you wanted to be into?
Well, it's really nice what the franchise consultant did with me, and what I do with my folks as well. We look at, where have you been? Where are you at now? and then where do you want to be? And so what he did a nice matchup, and that's what we do as consultants. He gave me a questionnaire, went through a questionnaire, answered a bunch of questions, and we got back together again, went through my questionnaire, talked about the different things that I like and I wanted to do, how I saw my life, now, and where I wanted to see it go in the next 5 to 10 years. And based on all that information, he was able to come up with about 5 or 10 different opportunities for me that matched what I was looking to accomplish. And those franchisors were looking for people like me as well. So we went through each one of those. And I think we probably went through, he introduced me to like 4 or 5 different ones. I went through a few of them. Some of my people go through 2 or 3 and, we can find them on. Some of them go through 5, 6 before they find the one. But what he did is he put me on the phone with them. He introduced me to them. I got on the phone with them, learned about their business, how they're going to help me do, advertising, marketing, how they're going to help me get clients, what to say to them, where to market, where to advertise on that. So I got to know those franchises really, really well before I decided to sign anything or do any investment or pay any franchise fees on them. So it was a very good learning experience on that one. So going through those 5 or 10 he sent me, and then 4 or 5 that I talked to, I was able to narrow it down to one that said, that's the one I like.
And what was it?
Schooley Mitchell Telecommunications Consulting. So what I did was I help businesses with their telecommunications needs on that. So think of like a car dealership. We have lots of phones in there. So the phone expenses can be pretty darn big on that. So what I did was I got their bills, their telephone bills, and Schooley Mitchell has a nice system set up where you enter that information into their database. And then what you can do is you get 3 reports from 3 different telecommunications companies that have the same service or better for a lower price. So then I presented those 3 options to my business people and said, these are the 3 options. And then pick one, and I'll be your telecommunications person on that. Anytime you have issues with phones, anytime you have anything that you need done, you just call me. And then we shared in the savings 50-50. So they saved money without having to pay me anything. And then I got paid because I got half of what they saved.
And how did they pay you the half?
I sent them an invoice. I kept their bills and I kept track of everything to make sure everything was running smoothly. So then I just sent them an invoice for half of what the savings were. And it was a 3-year contract for each one over the next 3 years. And they'd pay me half of everything that they'd saved on.
Okay. And is it expensive to get into franchising? Because sometimes there's a big cost, isn't there, outlay up front?
So it's a relative term. Is it expensive? Depending on how much money you have.
Well, no, what's the average? Is everyone different how much it costs to start the franchise with the people? Okay.
Excellent question, Ed. So the franchise fee itself is going to be a one-time franchise fee where they teach you everything you need to know about that business. Generally speaking, it's going to be $50,000, give or take. That's what most of them charge. One time on that. Then to keep that franchise a business, you pay royalties, generally between about 5 and 10% every month off the top, gross income. You pay 5 to 10%, keeps that franchise in business and they keep you abreast of what's going on in that industry itself. Now, as far as total investment for a franchise, that one's going to vary a little bit. So we can pretty much break it down into 2 groups on that one. We can look at the brick and mortar type franchises. So Ed, when you and I are driving around, that's what we see every day. Supercuts, Great Clips, Meineke, Mako, McDonald's, Taco Bell. Brick and mortar. Generally, it's going to be a little bit on the more heavily investment side because you're doing a build out of something on there. So $250,000, $300,000 right around the starting point, and then on up from there, depending on how big of a build out that you need to do for it. Basically, you build it and they will come is the general theme on that one. So now if we look at the other end of the spectrum, we have the services industry. The services industry are where your clients don't necessarily know you exist until they need you. For that, we're looking at a total investment of about $150,000, give or take on that one. Generally speaking, the small office is all that's needed. And quite often you'll go out to your clients rather than your clients coming to you, although it varies in some cases on that one. Think of restoration services like the Belfour Group. When you have a hurricane like Katrina or something, the Belfour Group comes out and does a cleanup. They did have to clean up for Katrina. They're the largest restoration company in the world on that. They have 1-800 water damage on that, which is anytime you have smoke, water, fire damage. And it's not just natural disasters. Lots of different things happen with that. Great franchise to get into, it's about $150,000. Think of anything that you need done around the home, all the way from, outside taking care of lawns, pest control, roofing, inside the house, cleaning the house, handyman services, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all of those great service industries on there, senior care, tutoring on that. So there's many different things that you can do in that realm, and you don't always have to do them full time. There's quite a few of these franchises where you can actually do it part time, what we call semi-passive, where you hire a manager to run it for you, and you just manage the manager and manage the profit and loss statements.
Yeah. So like if Taco Bell is probably hard to get into because they're everywhere now, right? Because it's saturated pretty much. And McDonald's is even worse. But there's like Roto-Rooter, that's a franchise, right?
I don't know what Roto-Rooter is.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just curious. I just see them everywhere, so I assume
They are.
Yeah.
Big company.
Yeah.
You'd probably get into something like a Neighborly Group. If you wanted something that big, you go for like Belfour, you go for like Neighborly, or you go for Authority Brands. They have many different franchises underneath their group on there. So Neighborly is the largest home services franchise in the United States. So if you're looking for something big where you wanted to reduce your risk, where they have thousands of franchisees, that'd be something to look at.
With your initial investment and say of $100,000, what's the payback time usually for you to recoup that money back?
It can be as little as just a couple of years on that, Ed. It can be pretty quick for a service industry. The service industry, you're not looking at a lot of overhead. So you've got out of the $150,000, $50,000 of it's going to be your franchise fee. Right. The other money is just getting that office, getting a couple employees trained, advertising, marketing, and you can get trained and you can get up and running within the first couple of months. So it's really quick. It's not unheard of to do break even after a year, but give it a couple of years and you should be up there with a good solid income.
And why wouldn't somebody just go start another business?
You can.
It's just a question, so.
Well, a lot of my people ask the same thing. The same thing is like, why don't I just do it myself? Well, you can. What you're looking for that franchise to do for you is get to where you want to be 2 to 3 years quicker than if you were to do it yourself. They've already made all those mistakes. They've already kind of outlaid that plan. They've reproduced it a few times, which is what you're looking for in a franchise. You want to make certain that they've reproduced it not only maybe within their city, so they have multiple locations, but in different cities and states. And you also want to look at the fact that whatever service or product that you're getting into and offering, that as many people as possible in many different cities and states can use it. So that way you have a good clientele base on that. But you can do it yourself. You got a lot more control if you do it yourself. You do whatever you want, whenever you want. When it's your business, you can have whatever size territory that you want. Like you alluded to, that Taco Bell is pretty saturated. Every franchise gives out kind of a protected territory on that. So they're going to kind of keep you within that territory. If you want your own business, you can run any territory you want. With a franchise system, you might be limited geographically to a territory. Still, they want to make certain that they have the demographics in there so that you can make a good, solid six-figure income and move up from there. But it's good to do a comparison. Look at doing it yourself. What does that entail? What do you have to know? Who do you have to contact? How do you do the advertising marketing? How do you talk to them? Who do you talk to? As opposed to if you were to go into a franchise where that's all outlined for you, step-by-step procedure. And you've got a whole team of people that are going to help you build your business as well. By yourself, whole team, you kind of got to do the give and take on that one.
Now, with the baby boomers getting older and 15 million businesses going to be coming up for sale, do franchises come up for sale?
They do. Interestingly enough, Ed, I don't get a whole lot of franchise resales because after you built up your franchise and you say, okay, and I've had people do this where they said, okay, I'm ready to sell. I said, okay, the first thing you got to do is tell the franchisor you're ready to sell. You tell the franchisor. First thing the franchisor is going to do is tell the closest franchisees to you they're selling their business. More often than not, an adjacent franchisee will pick up your franchise for you, which is why I don't necessarily have a lot of good resales on those. Occasionally I do, and I've got people all the time that are asking me for resales, so they go pretty fast. Great resale value on those businesses.
Okay. So when you're done, there's a easy out versus a lot of these people who build a business and then they go to sell it, they have not built a business to be sold, and they run into difficulties.
Always make certain that that business does not revolve around you. Whether that franchise says and some of them require that you do it, the full time. They don't want you to have another job or another business. They want you to be full time. Doesn't make any difference. As long as that franchise is running great, you can run it pretty much any way you want to within their guidelines. But above all, as what you indicated there, Ed, do not have that franchise revolve around you for a couple of reasons. One, the resale value is much better if it doesn't revolve around you. And two, you want to go on vacation every once in a while. You want to go do the things that you want to do. That's the whole reason of going into business for yourself. One of the things in the first place is that so you have the time to do the things that you want to do, so you're not stuck going to an office every day.
Right. Well, I mean, and the whole purpose is to build your business so you're not in your business. That's how you need to build it eventually. And for me, I had built mine up that way. But then with the recent thing that just happened, it's kind of scaled way back. So it taught me this is a great industry to make money in, but to use to go do other things with and build other businesses from it.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of figuring out how to do all that.
It's interesting that a lot of the franchises, my handyman franchises, for instance, they'll tell me, do not bring me a handyman because the handyman will want to do all the work. We don't want him doing the work. We want him building up that business, working on it, not in it, as you indicated.
Gotcha. I was like, what do you mean? It took me a second to figure out. So what you're saying is they don't want to just build it. They want to work in it. Yeah.
That is correct. And they don't, so it doesn't always work out because, you can't build it too well if you're the one doing all the work in there. You got to have somebody else do the work.
Well, it's just like I was prior military. So there's a reason that the generals aren't in the foxholes.
There you go. Good analogy.
Yeah. Because then they got to see the whole playing field. So
yeah.
It's not really the field, but it sounded better. Playing field.
I gotcha.
So you talk about this all the time. You deal with this day in and day out. What am I missing? What important question did I not ask you?
Okay. So a few things. One, top list, which we did already go over, many different franchises, many different groups. You've got brick and mortar, you've got the service industry. Okay. Service industry, $150,000, give or take. Brick and mortar, $250,000 on up. Easy to get funding for these franchises. Funding is a very simple process. We have people that do it all the time. As long as you've got good credit, that franchise has got a proven track record, you're good to go. Probably SBA Express loan for a service industry. You put down around $20,000. Then you drop $150,000, $200,000 in your bank account. If you're going to look at a brick and mortar, you're probably going to go for something like 7A loan. So you come up with about 20% down on that one. You do not have to run that franchise yourself full time. You can do it depending on the franchise. You can do it many different semi-passive opportunities in both brick and mortar and the service industry as well. 10 to 15 hours a week, depending on style. You manage the manager. You manage the profit and loss statements.
Gotcha. No, I'm confused for a second there.
Okay, one other thing while you're thinking.
Yeah, wait, go ahead. Yeah.
You don't always have to use other people's money for that. Most of my investors like using other people's money. You can use your own money.
Right.
You can do a 401k rollover. You can do an IRA rollover into a self-directed account. That's what I did to start my business. You are using your retirement money for that. So that is a personal decision. I didn't want to go into debt just because I don't like to. And I've got people, it's probably about 50-50. Half of them will use their 401ks, IRAs. Very simple process for that.
Yeah, if you use your 401k as a roller, you're going to pay taxes on that money you've
No.
taken. No?
Nope, you do not. So what happens with this? So first of all, it's not a 401k with your employer that you're with right now. You can't use that. It's going to be with the former employer. Okay. What you do with that is that you create a C corporation. Right? So Greg's C corporation. We created mine was Mohr Inc. Very, very ingenuitive there. What you do with that is that you then create Mohr Inc. checking account. So you got your checking account. We have people that'll do the rollover for you, keep you in good standing with the IRS. You take that 401k and you put it into self-directed. The reason why it's a self-directed 401k is that you can buy stock in any company that you want to on that. So you are going to buy stock in Greg's C corporation. Greg's going to buy his 401k plan. Greg's 401k is buying stock in Greg's C corporation on that. So what you do is that you, just like you do with anything else when you're buying stock, is that you take that money from that 401k plan, you send it over to Greg's checking account, and then what Greg does in Greg's C corporation issues a share, a stock certificate. Yeah, on that one. So, and that's what I did. I mean, they sent me an official stock certificate. You fill it out. It's part of the keeping track of all your things. Now you've got that stock certificate. There is no taxes whatsoever involved in that at all, because all you're doing is buying stock, just like you would in Microsoft or something like that. Simple as that. When you go to sell your franchise, or you decide you don't want to have it as a C corporation anymore, which is what I did. I went from a C corporation to an LLC. Then what you do is you just buy back your shares of stock when you liquidate that. So that's what I did, is that I had all the money that was in that C corporation, and I just used that to bring back my shares of stock, buy back my shares of stock. So you didn't pay taxes on that part either. So when you go to sell it, you're just buying back your shares of stock. Money goes back in there, and you don't get taxed on that either. And along the way, you can still put money back into the 401k plan. You still have the same kind of 401k plan that you did pretty much as employee. A little bit different, but pretty much the same concept, as you can put money into it on the way there. So a lot of good advantages on that one. Great tax advantages, especially when you go to sell the company.
Well, I didn't know about that part of it. It makes sense, but but it had, like you said, it has to be a past employer. Can't be a current employer, right? So you have to be quit in order to do this. You can't work for them. So.
One caveat, yes, indeed.
One little caveat, but if it was IRA, that's your own money.
Exactly.
And that's after tax money.
So. Right. So it's the same thing. You're not paying any taxes. You're not paying any penalties whatsoever. Yeah, if you have $100,000 in your 401k plan and you want to use that, then you just transfer 100,000 over into your company. And then that's basically what I did. I transferred 100,000 over there. And then after, 7 or 8 years, I had a little over $1 million. So I just bought back all my stocks, because every year you're going to have your stock valuated as part of the process. So my stock price, my valuation kept going up and up and up. So when I got to where I had, something like $1 million in the checking account, then my tax advisor says, you're way overdue. You got to get this, put that back in there on that, and let's just switch it over to an LLC. So that's what we did, and no taxes whatsoever on that. However, keep in mind one thing on that one. The one caveat is that there is that double taxation. So you get taxed as money coming in for income, and then when you go to pay yourself, you're going to get taxed. So you need to keep, if you're going to do that, you kind of need to keep your payroll down as small as possible, so you're not making too much, but then you build up a lot of money in your checking account on that. So give and take on that one.
That's when it's a C corp and not as an S, because as an S, right, it goes directly to the shareholder. But I always liked C corps until my tax bill, we got to do this other thing. No, I always liked it because my corporation always incurred the tax debt, not me.
Yep.
And they always have to pay it. Now with that, I could just, all of a sudden I'll have a huge tax debt because I have to take this income because I didn't do anything with it because we didn't know. But if it stays in the corporation, it can build up, and to a certain point, you pay taxes on it at 21%, but eventually maybe 28 here soon. And yeah, exactly. So there's so many things, but at least that's the corporation paying it, with pre-tax dollars, not you paying it with your W-2 dollars.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So before we go, what else does people need to know, and how do they find you? So 2 questions there.
Yes, a couple great questions. So one thing people need to know is that when I work with people as a franchise consultant, you don't pay me anything. I'm free. So I work with about 500 or a little bit more different franchises on that. If you decide to invest in one of the franchises I introduce you to, they pay me a referral fee. So again, never any charge for my services on there. I'm here to help you find the right franchise. I don't push people into it. Franchising is not right for everybody, even though I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I know not everybody does. So we're just here to investigate it. It's a great option to look into on that. If you're looking into going into business on that. So just keep that in mind. Great option. We'll teach you everything. By the time you're through with me, you'll know how to investigate every franchise in the US on that, even if you don't invest in a franchise through me. perfectly fine. You can find me at franchisemaven.com. That's franchise, MAV as in Victor, EN.com. Email me at greg@franchisemaven.com, or just pick up the phone and give me a call at 361-772-6401.
You also have a podcast, right?
I do, Franchise Maven podcast as well, where I speak with all sorts of wonderful people. I haven't had a chance to do it with Ed just yet. Hopefully someday soon we'll be able to get it together. But many different aspects of the business world, many different things that you can do. How to retire, how to sell your business, all sorts of different things related to business, not just franchising, as I realize franchising is not for everybody, but all of them are centered around entrepreneurship and going into business for yourself and how to build your business, build yourself.
Just so you know, I'm on Podmatch, so you can find me there if you want me.
I'm going to find Ed on there, and I'm going to interview you. You're going to get on my show.
Yeah, I got on there, and then next I was like, okay. Then I did my other podcast, and then it's like, hey, you should be a host. I mean, you should be a guest on other people's podcasts. So then you make a guest one, and next thing you know, you're an agency because you have so many different podcasts on there.
Yeah. Yep, I hear you.
Yeah. Again, Greg, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you being here and sharing this information for people to understand about franchises and what questions to ask, and then also how they can find you and get some more information. So thanks for being here today, Greg.
My pleasure, Ed. I appreciate you having me.
All right, my pleasure.